Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am Ashley Turner, and I'm so excited to be here today with Nicole McCance. And she is launching her book, 52 Ways to Beat Depression Naturally, which, of course, I'm so passionate about as a psychotherapist. And Nicole is a psychologist in Toronto, Canada. We met a while ago. And I'm really excited to interview you. And I just want to give people a little background on how this book came to be. And I think I'm so passionate about it because obviously, as a mind-body psychotherapist, and a yoga teacher, this is exactly what I'm trying to do: help people with depression, with anxiety, with natural remedies first, and then if that doesn't work, potentially moving on. But there's so many things that people can do just in general to stay happier. But certainly for people that are really struggling with depression. So, which is a really important and serious topic. So, tell us a little bit about how the book came to be.
Absolutely. So when I was, depression runs in my family, and when I was 17 years old, my father took his own life, and it was a real shock for me, because I didn't, as a 17-year-old, even know that he was depressed. Mm-hmm. And that really was a moment in my life where it motivated me to understand depression and understand exactly how to overcome it. So over the past 10 years, almost 15 now, I've been traveling the world and through education and so on. And in my own practice, I've noticed it's mostly when I'm working with clients, I would give a tip and it would work. And then I would give a technique and a tool and it would work. And I said, well, why don't I put it all in a book and package it so everybody can access this information, even those who can't afford to see a therapist.
Right. I think it's really important thank you so much for sharing that story. That's really personal, and it's so meaningful because I know with my clients, one thing about depression is, first of all, a lot of people don't realize that it really is a disease. And obviously some of us, run more normally, and then we have bouts of depression throughout our lives. And personally, actually, I just experienced that. I've just been going through a really challenging breakup, and part of that healing and that grieving process for me was slipping into depression. And I realized in November, December, wow, I'm really depressed. That's what this is right now. I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. I really had to minimize my work and minimize my social interactions. And I just really had to devote literally 3 whole months to massive self-care and do everything that I knew that I needed to do to support myself in moving through, this emotional phase. But for some people, it's not an emotional phase. Some people are really struggling with it. It does run in families. It is hereditary. And there's so much shame around depression. I think a lot of people have a hard time talking about it. So I just want to commend you for getting it out there, because that's part of my mission is, let's really bring this up to the surface and talk about it in the light and shed light on it and support. So tell us, so let's start with some tips, or what have you discovered in all of your research and personal life?
So my experience over the 10 years being in private practice, I've noticed when people walk into my room and they're depressed, it's almost like they have depressing habits. Like they've got into, whether it's a breakup or, they've been depressed for a long time, and depressing habits are not sleeping well. A depressing habit is isolating oneself and just pressing ignore on your cell phone. Depressing habit is just not eating. Like, I don't feel like eating, so I'm just going to skip a meal or 3 meals, and it's nighttime and I haven't eaten. So right away, I've noticed that they come in with certain habits. And in the book, I target specific symptoms or habits of depression. The biggest one is negativity, right? So the biggest one is this real sense of just negativity or feeling guilt or worthlessness, right? So the tips target that very specifically, and it's actually a cognitive behavioral technique, and it's called reframing. So in the book, it talks about if you're going through something, well, first of all, check if you don't feel good, okay? So whether you feel nervous or angry or sad, I want you to start checking into what am I thinking about in this very moment? Because often it's our thoughts that give us our mood. And then by reframing, and it goes into specific detail of how to reframe your thoughts, and you will feel better in that moment. And then, of course, it's building that habit of changing your thoughts in time.
Actually, I want to back up just a minute because I think just as you were speaking, it's important, and the reframing is so crucial, and I want to get back to that. But first of all, you mentioned a few symptoms, but let's drill down a few other symptoms so people can really be like, for myself, after my breakup, this fall and this winter, I didn't realize at first that I was depressed, and I was anxious. I couldn't go to sleep at night. I was waking up really early in the morning, which is not normal. I usually sleep really, really well. I lost my appetite, and I definitely tend to isolate. I'm a Cancer, and so I am already sort of a homebody, but I was really tending to isolate. And there was times where I realized I have to make the effort to reach out to people. I have good friends. I have amazing family that support me, but I really need to make that effort, even though it was sort of against in that moment, that instinct. So let's talk a little bit about some other symptoms of depression, just so people who may not be as aware can identify if they are in this phase.
Very important. So you mentioned a few of them. Another one is concentration. So you're more scattered. Your ability to focus is off. It's like, or sometimes we even get obsessive about certain things. Like we keep, after a breakup, or just like obsessive about our past, obsessive about the faults that we have. Not eating as well. So we're typically not sleeping well, not eating well, not socializing. There's a lot of guilt with depression. So we focus on what we should be doing. And then there's a lack of motivation and a real fatigue. So it's just this vicious cycle, because the more fatigued you are, then you guilt yourself and, I really should be calling my mom back, or should be working harder at work, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Another big symptom, if I can mention, is irritability. So depression doesn't always look sad. It can look on edge and agitated.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting distinction. And I also noticed when you were talking about concentration, like the inability to make decisions. And I obviously have a lot of friends that are therapists, but I didn't even put it together. I was talking to my dear friend, Daniel Stewart, who's my colleague, and we share an office, and he's a psychotherapist. And I was talking about something, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's difficult for you to make decisions. That's a sign of depression." And I was like, "Oh, that's a sign." I didn't really put it together. And so, having those reflections and those light bulbs going off, like, okay, I really need to pay attention to this and just make sure. And for me, also the fatigue and just feeling like you kind of have a cloud over you. I always picture that Snoopy character, I think it was Linus, that had like that dirty cloud around him. And I picture that as my, that sort of heaviness, or just like this weight on your shoulders of just like nothing in the world is that bright. And I had to give myself a lot of space and a lot of time to work with that should voice, and just know that my priority for those 3 months was massive self-care, and to give myself permission to do what I needed to do to really heal. And I really, again, my work was at a bare minimum. And I was a constant dialogue for me around giving myself permission to not put out, to not be producing work, but to really be turning inward and paying attention and attuning to my psyche and my soul and what it needed, because it was grieving and it was healing. So Thank you for that.
One other thing I think you mentioned, which is a really paramount symptom, is this sense of lack of interest and a loss of pleasure. So you'll notice, geez, I used to love, going to this, doing this hobby. And it's this general sense of like, I don't care, like a really like, whatever, right? This general sense of nothing brings me pleasure. The biggest thing to do is to tell someone, because if we're in it, it's hard to get out of it, and sometimes we don't even know that we're in it. So sharing exactly what you did, like sharing with a friend, or sometimes they'll point it out to you, right? It's like, oh, wow, okay. People are starting to notice, I need to do something differently.
Yeah. So seeking support is so crucial. And again, noticing if there is shame or if there is guilt around it, and finding either trusted friends or a therapist, which is great to have someone that's professionally trained that can really help you navigate those deep waters, because it's challenging, it's hard sometimes, and life is challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some other tips that you found are the most helpful for your clients or with your book research?
One thing I target as well is sleep. If we're not sleeping, we're much more irritable. we're down, when we're, even those who are depressed, I find if they're not sleeping, they're more teary, like they're just crying more often, because they don't have that foundational rest. So two things that people can do tonight is, number one, when they go to sleep, I'd like them to take a look at their room and how dark it is. There might be light coming in from the window or even the alarm. You want it to be pitch black. So one thing to do is to actually purchase an eye mask, one of those you sometimes wear on an airplane. So you want it to be pitch black, because then you release something called the human growth hormone. And you're going to have a much more restful sleep. You'll actually go to sleep faster. It's unbelievable. Something simple in the morning, you'll notice much more rested.
I sleep every night with an eye pillow. In yoga, we have the eye pillows that have lavender in them, and it's really good because it has a little bit of weight. So it actually, that pressure on your eyeballs and on your eye sockets helps internally the brain relax much more deeply, and obviously creates that pitch blackness as well. But yeah, that's a really important tool. And
especially with the lavender, right? That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And I work a lot with essential oils, and so the aromatherapy of lavender is obviously one of the most calming and universal oils to use for elevating one's mood, but also creating a sense of calm and peacefulness.
Yes. That's funny. I speak about aromatherapy and incorporating that in baths and at night as well. Very powerful.
Very, very powerful.
For sleep is, often we're laying in bed and there's a lot of racing thoughts, when we're depressed. It's just our mind will not turn off, and of course it's turned right on when we're trying to sleep. So I tell people to keep a Post-it note on their side table, and you're going to get all these things happening, like, oh, I forgot to email this person back, or I forgot to call my mom back, or I had to do this. I'd like you, even in the dark, I have my clients do this in the dark, take their pen, it's right here, and jot it down. It's almost like it's not going to ping pong in your head all night, and you know that, hey, it can be handled tomorrow. Yep. It's unbelievable once you're able to let it go and actually rest.
Yeah, putting it, I always think about that, like moving the thoughts outside of yourself. So it's not all just bumbling around inside, but it's living outside of yourself. There's a place for it, and it will be taken care of. It's so helpful.
Exactly. Another big thing is lack of motivation, right? So it's this vicious cycle where I know I need to do this project for work or for school, but I'm feeling really guilty because I'm not doing it. So there's a therapeutic technique called behavior activation. And all that is don't focus so much on the task because it's overwhelming and you may stay stuck. So what I tell my clients is to do something small, like get up and change your behavior, whether it's take a shower, brush your teeth, go grocery shopping. But it's almost like starting that momentum, and as the behavior starts to activate, then it's much more easy to then start the project because you're kind of like starting to go, right?
Right.
It's just taking a first small step, and it may have nothing to do with the big step at the end, but just getting going.
Getting
and
activated.
You'll know, yeah, and I'll measure my clients' moods, and it's unbelievable when they're in some sort of action, their depression reduces because they feel a sense of usefulness as a human being, which is important to us, to feel useful.
I think, I did a priestess training, and my priestess Ariel would always talk about the power of water. And water is obviously cleansing, it's purifying, and she would say, like, if you really need to shift your energy field or you really need to shift your mood, take a shower. It's the best thing. It's like that running water pouring off of you, and you will automatically feel better when you get out of the shower. So if that's the only thing that you can do that day, take a shower, make your bed, like these small things, brilliant.
Brush your teeth, make a snack, just do something, change your state, because the state you're in right now, you're going to continue to, have those racing thoughts that aren't working, right?
And then lastly, I just want to touch on, as a yoga teacher and as a mind-body psychotherapist, the importance of the body. So give us just a couple body techniques or things that you recommend and why exercise is so important for working with depression.
Absolutely. So we all know that exercise is really important. It's difficult for some people that aren't motivated, right? But I even tell them if they're not one to exercise, there's two things I suggest. Number one, there's 3 yoga poses that I suggest that reduce anxiety and that are in the book, which are really phenomenal, and you don't need any type of fitness to do them, which is great. It's good to start for everybody.
Yeah.
The other one is something called tapping, known as emotion-focused therapy. And I give some tips in the book. It's certain meridians in the body that if you tap, it calms you. And the most effective one that I suggest for my clients is the karate chop point, which is just the side of your hand here, and tapping it. And the cool thing about this is you can do it during a conference meeting under the boardroom table. No, I'm doing it right now. Nobody knows, right? It's and it just calms you down. And in addition, I think that the biggest thing is the mind and the body connection through breath. So there's, a tons of techniques in the book of connecting with your breath, because the breath will calm your mind. And when your mind is calm, you're able to shift your thinking, which changes your mood in the moment.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned those, because I work all the time with the breath with my clients, obviously in yoga classes. But the importance physiologically is that when you take deeper, fuller breaths, you are moving your body from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. So instead of that fight or flight mentality, you're shifting it into a relaxation mode, a response mechanism instead of a reactionary mechanism. And you're also training your body's set point. So you're training yourself to be more comfortable living in that relaxed state.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been such an honor, and I am so grateful that you have put this book together, because it is needed in the marketplace as therapists, as just for the general population. It's amazing, and I have it. I've read it. It's incredible. I'm going to be highly recommending it to everyone. So the book launches on Monday, January 21st. And go to Amazon.com today, order your copy. And then tell everybody your website so they can go there and get more information about you and all of your work.
Absolutely. So it's my name, NicoleMcCance.com. I'll spell my last name, McCance. There's actually breathing techniques and things on the website.
And those links are right below. So everybody check it out. Please leave a comment below. It's really helpful to share with each other. So we want to hear, what are your techniques? What have you worked with to combat depression? And thank you so much, Nicole.
My pleasure.
Yeah. I can't wait to see you soon, hopefully in Laguna.
Okay, bye.
Take care.